kid from the bush who grew into a legend in his own lunchtime, former SAS soldier Michael J. Malone has seen it all. This is Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, hosted by the man himself, Mick Malone, along with Toby Malone, as they examine this long, storied career in the Australian Special Forces. Join us each week for behind-the-scenes insight, exclusive readings, and brutally honest truths from a true original. Welcome to Never Die Wondering. Welcome to episode 46 of Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, a podcast that explores the life and legend of Michael John Malone, OAM. My name is Toby Malone, Mick's son and co-host of this podcast series, joined by the man whose name is in the title, Mick Malone. G'day, Dad.
How you going, mate? All
Yeah, I'm
right?
good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, really well, really well. I can't quite believe we're at the end of the book. We've gone all the way
Oh,
through your whole career.
it's been a hard run.
The book or the career or the podcast?
Both, both.
Oh, no, I don't know about that. It's been really enjoyable to sort of get a chance to work through all these different moments and get a little bit more insight. I know we're getting a lot of nice feedback from people who are listening and bumping into people who are listening along and getting nice feedback from people from listeners on YouTube and things like that. So
Good.
clearly people are getting something out of it, and I'm glad we did it. I'm glad I managed to talk you into it.
Well, it's my legacy, isn't it?
It is. It really
Um,
is. Yeah, that's why we wrote it. And
yeah,
um,
yeah. No, I thank you for kicking me up the backside.
yeah. No, it's I'm pleased to do that for you. And so in the last episode, we were talking about your time in your last posting in the SAS as 2IC at the training squadron, and
Mm.
that period. So when we'd moved back, so around that period, I was around 13 or 14 years old. So this comes into very vivid focus for me as the most memorable time of your military career for me, in particular. So it's sort of interesting to see you retell these stories based around these more recent moments, and we're going to get into more of that in the next chapter when we talk about your retirement, um, where you retired in 1993. Right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yep, I'm there.
Yeah. Um, so it's so when you were nearing retirement, did you have any misgivings, any worries? Did you?
Well, I expected to be promoted to major,
Right.
and there were plenty of major jobs around WA in Army Reserve units and stuff. But the powers that be said, if you want to be a major, Malone, you've got to go back to the eastern states.
Hmm.
And I said, I'm not doing that. Anyway, um, before we knew it, we were offered a redundancy package, 25 years service and minimum rank captain. And two of us qualified and we both took it,
Right.
Johnny Dodd and I.
But you were worried all through your career. You were worried that if you got out of the army, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have that
Especially
worry?
after, especially after Vietnam, I was terrified to leave.
So you were at this point when you retired, you were 45. Is that right? Around
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
And so obviously, I mean, now nearing 80, you've had nearly half your life just about
On the
um,
sidelines.
since then. But the reason why we put the title of this chapter in quotation marks, retirement in quotation marks, is because you didn't retire at all. Not really.
Not really, no.
I feel like you've been flat out ever since.
Yeah, well, the book business was a flat out business, which I think we had a real good handle on.
Right.
The fact that we came up with the idea of putting out, well, not wasn't our idea, but other book dealers did it, putting out a monthly catalogue and developing a mailing list that would be fairly big.
Right.
And then we found two 17-year-old kids, uh, who tech geniuses who built our database for us,
Hmm.
and which we still use today.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, not a lot of, and then there was a lot of different, I mean, we're going to read about it all in the chapter, but um,
Yeah.
it is a fairly lively chapter, and it's one of the longer chapters in the book, but I think it's also
Mm,
one of the longer chapters because there are so many pictures of all of the
mm,
different activities you were doing in that
mm.
time. So, yeah, some fairly exciting things going on. So, well, why don't we just jump into it and read the chapter because there is plenty to talk about, and this is our final reading chapter of the book, which has been, as I say, 43 chapters. Has gone by very quickly for me, at least producing this podcast. I feel as though we've managed to get through without any rancor or any difficulty,
Mm.
and it's been quite enjoyable to getting
That's been
to
good.
talk it through. So and I will reassure our listeners, but that we have plans for the future. This is not the last episode of the podcast by any means. Um, but yeah, this is the end of the book. So let's get this to it. So today we'll be reading chapter 43 of Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, OAM, published in 2024 by Imprimatur Books, Perth. This chapter, entitled Retirement, in quotation marks, covers pages 337 to 353 in the print edition. The ebook may have slightly different numbering, so follow from the beginning of the chapter. As we read, the body of the text will be read by author Mick Malone. Whenever we come across a footnote, we'll pause in the least disruptive way possible and I will read the footnote. And now, without any further ado, Two Ranks on the Road.
Chapter 43, Retirement, 1993 to 2024. Never die wondering. A month into my retirement, I took a call from Brigadier Terry Nolan, Commander 5th Military District, 5MD, who wanted me to take the manager of the Army Museum job. Paid as a captain, 100 days per year, civilian clothes. How could I say no? Also around this time, I decided that I needed a van in which to haul boxes of books. Joe and I settled on a new Toyota Hiace, which provided excellent service for about 12 years. I spent 8 years managing the Army Museum, initially at the heritage-listed Dilhorn House.
Footnote: the building was and is a Victorian mansion once owned by Sir Thomas Loughton, MP, with all that land now occupied by Loughton Park Tennis Club and HBF Park, Perth Ovals, his sweeping vista.
On Balga Street in Perth. During my time as manager, Dilhorn was sold and the museum needed a move, lock, stock and barrel, to the old artillery barracks in Fremantle.
Footnote: we were hoping we'd be installed in Swan Barracks in Northbridge, thus creating a museum precinct with the WA Museum, but it was not to be.
Whilst Dilhorn was a lovely old building, it had basically outlived its usefulness, with little space for galleries we were planning. The Fremantle Artillery Barracks was an ideal site for a growing museum, with room for grand galleries, a bookshop, an ideal administration building, and plenty of space outside on the vast parade ground and environs for armoured and artillery static displays. The Western Australian University Regiment, WAUR, was still in occupation and in approximately half the space, but we were happy to make the move. A few years after we moved in, the University of Notre Dame in Fremantle offered to buy the barracks, and the Army was very close to accepting their offer.
Footnote: Notre Dame has made a habit of swallowing up Fremantle real estate for their campus. It's not always a good look.
We had a trick up our sleeve to thwart the interlopers, as it were. All our old volunteers picketed the university and were so relentless, Notre Dame pulled their offer. Fantastic. This foray was led by Paul Bridges, a socialist who knew his way around the houses. It was a great day when we were informed that the invaders had been turned away at the gates. The museum was curated by the very effective Wayne Gardner, ex-10 Light Horse,
Footnote: he had been deputy curator under Sid Jenkins in the old museum, Dilhorn.
and was populated by a team of able and enthusiastic volunteers who were in the main ex-servicemen and women. They were mainly gallery guides who always reported for duty, rain, hail, and shine. Imprimatur Books opened a bookshop in a small storeroom within a year of our arrival. It was quite a popular venue and proved a good outlet for museum visitors. I worked with some amazing people at the museum, such as Wayne Gardner, Sandy Hay, Doug Gim, Harold and Helen Birch, Wes and Dale Olson, Pam and Len Jakes, Andrew Pittaway, and many others. In 1994, I flew to Adelaide to attend Stanley Bilbra's art show. He was a prodigious artist and always loved to throw paint around. He was a Banksy well before Banksy. Stan and I hadn't seen each other for 20 odd years, and he asked how he would recognise me at the airport. I said, look for a handsome round man with a briefcase. When I came through the terminal, there was this Darrow holding up a sign which said, handsome round man with briefcase. And so we rendezvoused successfully. His art show was held in the Mile End Hotel in a seedier part of town. A lot of people attended and Stanley paid out on them in some savoury language. The grog flowed and Stanley sold the lot. I bought two. A day or so later, we drove up to the Adelaide Hills to visit Greg Matthews and his lovely wife Anne, where Greg and Stanley tied one on. Time to go, and I shoveled him into the car and drove him home. What a day. On 12 June 1996, we were all torn apart by the Black Hawk disaster on High Range Townsville during the CT exercise, where one Army Black Hawk crashed into another Black Hawk. 18 soldiers were killed, 15 from SASR and three aviators. The regiment was deeply stung, as we all. We were living in Mount Claremont at the time, and I was an honorary member of the officers' mess, so I raced down the road to the mess in the hope that I could be of some use in consoling families of the lost. It was a tragic scene with many women and kids huddled together in the middle of the room. I cried nearly as much as I had when we flew Dave Fisher's home from Vietnam. I soon realised that there was very little I could do beside offering in glasses of water and tissues. When I finally went home, it was a scene of sadness. Both kids were torn up by the sheer volume of the disaster. Thankfully, my stoic bride was there to show strength and resilience. It was the lead story on every channel and newspaper. The regiment would not speak to the press, so I was delegated to do so within very strict parameters. I was heavily involved with legacy at this time and put my hand up to keep an eye on a few of the beleaguered families. Slowly, very slowly, life began to return to normal for many of us. Legacy and DVA did a lot of work for the families and continue to do so to this day. The SAS Resources Fund was initiated as a direct result of the disaster. It was started by an enigmatic Perth businessman named Jeff Kazim and has been carried on most successfully to this day. In 1997, I produced a book, SAS Pictorial History of the Australian Special Air Service, 1957 and 1997. It was quite an exhausting project dealing with Access Press in Perth and to get it delivered by the launch deadline. The launch was to be in the SASR gym with over 600 people indicating attendance. My biggest problem was the books only arrived at SASR on the morning of the launch. I haven't even had a proof copy to read, which was supposed to be delivered to me 4 weeks prior. The setup in the gym went flawlessly, though, with the drinks and finger food, and Joe and Georgia and a couple of her mates were manning FS tables to handle sales. All the pre-sales were stacked on the floor with first edition hardbacks, along with 152 Emu leather bounds.
Footnote: Mooker Stanton, OC 152 Signal Squadron, who was a sergeant with us in Vietnam, demanded number 152, but we only did 150 copies in leather. A quick call to the publisher for 2 extra copies, and it was done.
Whilst I was pleased with the look and quality of the bindings and its slipcase, I wasn't happy with the production of the photos. There were various mistakes, such as free falls in formation but upside down. When we did the card cover reprint, we were able to correct the various mistakes. All copies have now disappeared into collections and it has become a rare book. The Governor of WA, Major General Mike Jeffrey, was invited to launch the book. Like me, he hadn't had an advanced copy to peruse, so I was worried his speech would lack the normal spiel about content. I worried needlessly. The WA Army Band was set up in the far corner of the gym, as far away from the podium as possible, as there are no volume switches on brass bands. Once the speeches were made, it became a very social night with the sales tables doing a brisk trade. Mike Jeffrey and I spent hours signing books. I think we signed up to 1,000 books that night. Many members were well on the way to round bottom shoes, but we were well behaved. I didn't get out of there till around 6 a.m. As I walked out, the sun was rising. I walked up to the ASASA house directly opposite, and the bar was still open with a sale customer, Red Webb. He was still drinking, but I needed coffee desperately. Red dropped me home very loudly, much to Joe's ire, after which I proceeded to sleep the sleep of the righteous. Simultaneously, I was heavily involved in the SAS Association as the editor of the Rendezvous Journal, a quarterly journal which detailed the goings-on in each of the ASASA branches. I developed the journal from a desktop published news sheet stapled in the corner to a glossy work of art it is today under the current editor, Rick Simpson. One of the most important aspects was the development of the in memoriam pages, listed every man and woman who served in SAS since 57 and had died. It took a bit of doing, but we got there, and thankfully this has continued to this day. The peak of life of this journal was the production of the Jubilee edition, hardback book in 2007. We owe member Brian, ex-K-Trip, and Annette Kent and their company Photocards Australia a huge vote of thanks for the outstanding production. The great WA cartoonist Paul Rigby had volunteered to do something for the cover, but unfortunately died before he could, so his son, Bay Rigby, stepped up and produced a most remarkable work. Another cartoonist who contributed greatly was Rene Dicko Dickenberg from the South Australian branch. His remarkable 4-page cartoon strip of the genesis of SAS from 1957 to 2007 is a joy to behold. Another artistic contributor was Ford Miles, whose quirky designs were excellent. I'm pleased to say the book was a great hit and sold out quickly. Around this time, I became a steward at the Royal Perth Wine Awards show at Claremont Showgrounds. I was one of a team who received wine from growers around the country, placed their exhibits in the correct category, and set up the judges' tables. We set up 15 tables in 3 rows of 5, dedicated tables with a myriad of squares painted onto them. Once we got the judging schedule, we identified the wines to be judged and hauled them to the tables. All of the judges would have a table full of bottles, say Pinot Noir, to judge. We stewards would pour the wine before the judges arrived, double-checked by the head steward. Once poured, we retreated to the shadows to await the finish. Once judging was finished, we would remove the glasses to the kitchen and prepare the next lot, and so on for a full week. The best thing was we were allowed to take home open bottles of wine with only a nip missing from the top. For the first few years, we had the best parties at Rochdale Road, serving gold and silver medal winning wines until a very officious lawyer type from the Royal Agricultural Society came down and forbade the practice. They actually supervised the pouring of Henschke, Penfolds, Rockford, and any number of other gold medal winners down the drain. Such sacrilege. I left there pretty soon after, but it had been an enjoyable gig while it lasted. We really enjoyed living at Mount Claremont as it was close to everything, especially the beaches, the kids' schools, and Campbell Barracks. As an honorary in the officers' mess, I had access, but that was it. My security clearance had lapsed when I took discharge, so consequently I was not in the loop. In the mess, the officers were justifiably tight-lipped about current activities, and it was ever thus. They knocked down a lot of the barracks that I knew and built a lot of new stuff. My daughter and I visited the combined officer sergeant's mess one Anzac Day and stood beside the bronze statue of the original originator of SAS in World War II, Colonel David Stirling, looking out over the Rugby Oval and the Indian Ocean. The new mess didn't seem to have the same vibe as the mess I remember, but it is what it is. Anzac Day was always the most important day for our family. Both my kids pulled on a boot each Anzac Day and in whatever city we were posted to. Canberra was always a special place to be at the Australian War Memorial. We marched with the kids wearing their grandfather's gongs or a replica set of my own. We marched in Sydney and especially Perth. Our business imprimatur book started off slowly with the database being increased on a daily basis. My problem was finding good stock, and my main interests were and remain Australian Special Forces, Vietnam, World War One and World War Two. I was determined to restrict my book buying to these categories, but I also bought a lot of aviation, naval and American Civil War titles, mainly at auctions and from the public.
Footnote. Later on, I also created a new category called Human Endeavour, which was mountaineering, expedition, single-handed voyages, survival, and anything else that I had that didn't fit into another category.
I would get a call from a lady who wanted to sell her recently departed husband's book collection. So I'd go around there and trawl through the collection, spotting the odd gem, make her an offer and be off. I was always armed with cash money. Many a time it was buy the lot or none. I was never in a position to buy schmutter or ephemera, so often walked away empty-handed. I bought a lot of stuff from other dealers such as Blue Burridge from John Burridge Military Antiques, Helen Muir from Robert Muir's, and Lonka McGill from Serendipity Books. I was also in receipt of catalogues from other dealers on the East Coast.
Footnote. This was before online sales were the big thing they are today.
Yeah. I also displayed at the Arms and Armour Military Fair and were very successful. Thankfully, I tended to sell more than I bought. After the first 2 years, our mailing database had risen to 400. Remember, this is very early on in the internet, so every catalogue would be sent out to be printed. It was then cottage industry stuff, with family production lines to produce, print, and fold catalogues, stuffing envelopes, addressing envelopes, and sticking stamps. Around this time, Charlie Stewart and I designed the SAS Association tie while wallowing in our great pool on Rochdale Road on a scorching summer's day. The design was and is a great hit and is worn to this day by ASASA members around Australia, especially on Anzac Day. We were in Mount Clement for 10 years, through all of the kids' time at Scotch and MLC. Both continued their love of and involvement in theatre and performance throughout their schooling and beyond. They both did very well at school, with Toby taking the drama prize in Year 12. He also made the first 15 rugby team in Year 10 and played there till he finished. He then went off to UWA where he took honours in English and history and continued to impress at the Colts level for Cottesloe. At the end of his time at UWA, he got a university exchange to Queen's University in Kingston, Canada, where he met a Canadian girl, Meg Logue, fell in love and never came back. Scoundrel. He went on to complete a PhD in Shakespeare Studies at University of Toronto to much acclaim. Toby has lived in Canada for over 20 years now, coming home as often as he can with his growing family. He's worked as an actor.
Footnote. Oh, God. Okay. Including roles on stage at the Perth Playhouse, His Majesty's Theatre, and the Regal Theatre, and in the leading part of a movie, Roll, 2003.
Dramaturge.
Footnote. Toby provided dramaturgical background research for major theatre companies across Canada, the US, and the UK, and published a book, Cutting Plays for Performance, a practical and accessible guide, in 2021.
University professor, and after a third degree, Master's in Library Studies, is now a librarian. Our daughter-in-law, Meg, is a beloved music teacher at an arts high school in Toronto. Memorably, Meg uses her beautiful singing voice to sing a version of Kate Bush's Mandaneran, Women of Ireland, for my 60th birthday bash, accompanied by Don and Lindsay Blue and their talented kids, Lyndon and Maddie. Not a dry eye in the house. Georgia also excelled at MLC as a rower and netballer. She also stage managed a huge production of the musical Oliver at school, for which she was highly commended. She then started a film studies degree at university, but opted to establish her own theatre company instead.
Footnote: Georgia helmed the innovative Not the Mama productions from 2001 to 2005 and produced some stunning plays, including one, Blood Relations, that featured Toby in a major role.
She came into her own later on studying business and completed an external studies degree with the University of South Australia. I flew to Adelaide with her for her graduation ceremony, after which we took a hire car to tour the Barossa Valley and the McLaren Vale, two of Australia's premier wine growing regions. She experienced the excellence of Rockford, one of the great producers of reds in the valley. Whilst there, we caught up with the Honourable Martin Hamilton Smith, MLA, one of my old troop commanders in SASR, and recently a member of the South Australian Parliament. Marty gave us a guided tour of the Parliament and held us in his politician's thrall. He has since retired and escaped to the Adelaide Hills with his Greek goddess. Georgia has continued her studies, has excelled in arts marketing and management at major companies and festivals across Australia, is now working to use the power of the arts to support communities to thrive. She established her arts management company, GM Consulting, working with all the major and medium arts companies in WA. In 2001, Joe bought a flat on Stirling Highway in Claremont opposite MLC, in which Georgia lived when she left school and where Toby and Meg lived after they were married. They were married on 10 March 2001 at St Joseph Church in Subi, where I had the great privilege of being best man. We celebrated in the presence of both our families from across Australia and the world. Jim and Jean Logue and Jean's dad, Dick Lashley, made the journey from Canada. The reception was held at the ASASA house in Swanbourne, which was heaving in typical fashion. In 2002, after 10 years in Rochdale Road, we decided on a tree change and found a beautiful 1 acre block in Sawyers Valley, just outside Mundaring, about 45 minutes from Perth. It was a great house with 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, large lounge, and sweeping views across an expensive backyard. We converted the 2-car carport into my new book room. It was the other end of the house, which ensured peace and quiet. The book room door was glass panelled, which allowed me to uninterrupted views down the driveway. We had 2 cars at this stage. Jo drove down the hill daily in her VW Golf, whilst I had my Toyota van. When it came time to trade the Golf in on a new VW Tiguan, the Golf had 250,000 Ks on the clock.
Footnote: I still had my Toyota van at this stage, which I gifted to my son-in-law, John Carter, once we'd decided we had enough tree change living and moved back to the city.
Toby and Meg have been living in Toronto since 2002, and on September the 18th, 2009, they welcomed Cormac Michael James.
Footnote: with middle names to honour both grandfathers, including my good self.
Malone is their family. Malone to their family. He was a beautiful baby and has grown into a tall, handsome and gifted teenager. There's not a sport he doesn't have a shot at, from ice hockey, skiing, rugby, baseball, curling. At school, he's heavily involved. Joining student council, the swim team, and many musical ensembles. He plays the guitar, both bass and electric, and saxophone. Recently obtained a stand-up bass. Dad's going to need a bigger car. This is one super proud granddad. Of course, every family needs a boss, and in the Canadian family, that's our granddaughter, Bridie. She was born Bridget, Bridie, Mary Dawn.
Footnotes: with middle names to honour both her Aunt Mary and Joe's mother, Dawn.
Malone in Toronto on January the 13th, 2012. What a beautiful baby, an equally beautiful little girl, and now a stunning preteen. Bridie loves to play music and sing. She takes after her mother. Played Fagin in the musical Oliver. She takes after her parents and has the craft gene, knitting, sewing, and crocheting. She takes after Joe and Dawn. She's a tall, confident girl who's a voracious reader. We couldn't be prouder. In 2013, in keeping up with our 10-year tradition, we moved back down the hill to the urban tranquility north of Northbridge in Perth, which was handy for Joe's job at the Perth Institute of Contemporary Arts, which is now at the foundation for the WA Museum in the city. Even though we lived in a busy road, the double glazed windows reduced the noise dramatically, except of a Saturday when it seems all the cashed up hoons in their noisy cars seemed to drive down Ball Street in front of our house. Hyde Park Lakes are 100 metres from our front gate. They are lakes teeming with ducks, swans, dabchicks, frogs, long-necked tortoises, ibis, and the odd rat. The birds all produce a new clutch every spring, including a pair of swans.
Footnote, who are very protective of them, as many of our Asian friends have found to their chagrin.
Hyde Park, with its twin lakes, is a very popular place for families and has a very good kids' playground and a couple of coffee trucks in attendance. At the height of summer, it's packed with picnicking families and kids running everywhere, especially in the marvellous water park. There's a very popular bandstand in the park where many bands come to play. It's also an ideal park for summer fairs, which causes havoc with parking for us locals. But it is what it is, and life goes on. Georgia met JC, John Carter, in 2008. He travelled with us on our big trip to Canada to meet Cormac for the first time in 2009, and they were married in Perth on December the 8th, 2017.
Footnote, which would have been Dawn's 99th birthday.
In the attendance of both families, a great reception at the University Rowing Club saw Georgia off on the way to wedded bliss. They bought a little house in Maylands and have figured out the value of a strong support system. They both work hard at the top of the game in their careers, in the arts, and in her spare time, Georgia is an accomplished cook, which JC is more than happy to eat what she cooks. During this decade, the loss of both of our mothers hit us hard. Both Joyce, 1925 to 2013, and Dawn, 1918 to 2011, had led particularly full lives, having survived the Great Depression and World War II. They both produced great families and were well loved by all. Dawn was 93 and Joyce 87. R.I.P. Nana and Noni. Around 2009, I decided someone should write the biography of Ray Simpson, VC DCM, one of our greatest soldiers from the Vietnam War. With the able assistance of Pete Lutley, we got stuck into it. We interviewed a myriad of people all over Australia and in the US.
Footnote, including Chuck Kaczynski in San Francisco. Chuck was the US Army medic who saved Simo's life when he was shot through the leg on 16th September 1964 at Tarco. Simo continued leading his men in the battle, although severely wounded through the thigh and bandaged up with a saline drip in his arm, thus winning a Distinguished Conduct Medal, a DCM.
Simo was a big project and it came through swimmingly. It was published by Imprimatur Books in hardback in 2015 with the leather-bound and cardcover editions coming out in 2020. The leather-bound edition was sold pre-launch, which generated enough money to pay for the hardback while we funded the cardcover edition ourselves. All in all, it has been a successful project. At the same time, I started work on the Peter Badco VC bio, which is the next cab off the rank as far as books go, provisionally titled Crazy Brave, The Enigma, a biography of Peter Badco VC, a fearless Australian soldier of the Vietnam War. Look for it in 2025. In early 2020, the whole world changed when the COVID-19 virus started to spread. Given my breathing issues from both childhood asthma and CT training gas, I had no intention of getting exposed to the virus. Luckily, our Northbridge idyll meant I could ensconce myself at home, watch cricket on television and keep selling books online. Jo kept up her busy social and work schedule, but I decided I would retreat from public life entirely. After years of being dragged along to live theatre, concerts and dinner parties, I was able to really savour being at home, watching whatever I wanted on TV and enjoying retirement. The isolation of that time, while a blessing in some ways, also gave me time for reflection. Making it into my 70s, given the tribulations I've been through to get here, making it into my sevens, is a pretty big deal. I served with a lot of good men who didn't make it this far, and I have had the chance to watch my children and grandchildren grow. I felt loved and cared for, and there was no major dramas in my life. The only real point of sadness I had was the almost weekly report of old mates going to their reward, which I suppose is natural at this time of life. As hero after hero were laid to rest, I started to really think about where I had come from and the people who have helped me form the man I am. So in the winter of 2020, I started jotting down notes of memories of my childhood, and in particular the impact of the women in my early life, like my beloved mother, sister, and grandmother. As I wrote, new memories bubbled up, and I found a purpose in the lockdown. The first book, Hail Mary, the Creek's Up, is still unpublished for now. I showed it to my academic son, who offered editing advice and encouragement. He said, "Dad, I love that you've written this. The stories are so important for the history of our family. But what about your military career? You have so many stories from there that I bet people everywhere would love to read." I didn't really rate the idea that people would be that interested in what I'd done, but I found it so restorative to write down my childhood memories that I created a new document and started to tell my army stories. I wrote for nearly 3 years with the good stuff and bad, although the bad stuff is pretty hard to dwell on at this time later, all this time later. And with the support of my wife and kids, I found a purpose that kept me going through the pandemic. The genius thing about the internet is that you can work on something in real time with people who are far away. My editor son, Toby Malone, has dutifully coaxed this book into existence on Google Docs and FaceTime all the way from Canada, fixing my bushy phrasing and making sense of what chapters went where. The best part of all this was how rewarding it was to look back over memories of a life lived. I think about blokes I served with, some heroes, some dills, some who featured for a short time, and others who were there for the whole time, the whole way. Reminds me of what was most important. From day one in the recruiting office with Jack Dulles and Rod Wallace to today, my mates have been my guiding light. And after meeting Joe, I found a loving family that gave me a reason to believe that there was more to life than soldiering. Watching my kids grow up, seeing them get married and have kids of their own has been the greatest gift. For years, I used to quote the heroic line from Sir Peter Stimogen, "If I die, I die, I have a son to carry on my name." I used to say this when people would shy me about my health, or my kids would worry about keeping me upright. Writing this book, though, has given me a great gift to know that passing on stories of the men I have served with was something I had to do both for their sakes and mine. I close this book with knowing that I have lived a productive and honest life and have been blessed with a loving family, devoid of rancour and inhibition, and mates who demonstrated they would literally die for me. Family and mates are all to me. I'd be totally bereft without them. The best thing about this process has been the fact that as I write out a story or a memory, new ones flood in to take their place. I've been recalling long buried events and men, incidents almost faster than I can write them down. But this gives me an opportunity to make sure that they live on for readers. This has been a real privilege. It's very humbling to write your story and hear that so many people are keen to read what I've written. When we announced on social media that this book was coming out, the number of blokes who reached out to order a copy or to tell me about how I impacted their careers has been overwhelming. It's an amazing thing to be able to hold a sheaf of papers in your hand that represent your entire life. When my son finished creating the enormous index of this book, I read through it and was overcome with memories sparked by names, places, and events. I started out as an aimless, gormless youth, but reading back over the stories from my career, I can see how I gradually and unexpectedly found my calling to serve, to instruct, to pass on what I learned. I used to say that I only knew one thing, the cyclic rate of fire of an M60 machine gun.
Footnote, 650 rounds per minute.
But it turns out I've retained a bit more than that, and I've been able to pass it on. The diggers who served under me have risen to dizzying heights I could never have dreamed, and if you told me that bullfed baggy ass in 1966 that he would change so many lives, he'd never believe you. If I pass on one thing from this book, it's to say that an honest, hard-working life can have a big impact, and it can't be done alone. If you look to your mates and help those who need it, you will live a life worth remembering. I'm still that simple tearaway kid from Binaway, but when you boil it down, my most important values have been and still are the beauty of women, the innocence of children, the love of family and mates, the loyalty of dogs, and the importance of charity towards those less fortunate. In the end, it all comes down to one thing. I always told my kids, never die wondering. You have to take the opportunities when they come and do your best. They've taken this to heart and have grown into extraordinary people. I like to think I've lived my life to the same credo, and while I would never call myself extraordinary, I've lived a good life I can be proud of.
And that was chapter 43, the final chapter from Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, as read by the author. All right. Wow. Emotional end to the book. How you feeling?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you need a
Wish I'd
minute?
done, wish I'd have done all the other chapters like this.
That's all right. That's okay.
But it's good.
So how did it feel to read that through? That chapter is
Yeah, I can't believe I wrote that. You sure you didn't write?
I helped a bit. That's all
It
right.
was good. It was good. I think I rounded it off quite well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's a long chapter, but it covers um nearly 30 years or more than 30
yeah,
years of retirement. So lots of things going on in there.
yeah.
What strikes you about when you read that summary of 30 years of retirement? What stands out to you when or highlights?
Uh, Mainly Joe and your kids.
Yeah.
Best.
It was a real change. One of the major features of my childhood was that you were always away, and um, it was just a fact of life that well you were in the bush
Yeah,
away. So um, from the time we moved to Mount Claremont, you were suddenly around all the time,
yeah,
which was a good
yeah.
thing.
That was good.
Yeah. And then, I mean, just in time for us all to sort of start going our separate ways when, I left home and or went to uni and things like that. But
Watching you knock around with all the spunky girls.
well, that's what you do. I'm in that I'm in that phase right now with my son. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly right.
yeah. So yeah, so I mean,
Maybe I was able to teach you a few things about 16-year-olds.
yeah, yeah. I think my 16-year-old is quite a nice kid. So I'm
Oh, he's a great kid, mate.
mhm. um,
Certainly far better than I ever was.
yeah. Well, I think that's always the hope, isn't it? That your kids will be just a little bit better than you are.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so 30 years covered 31 years in that chapter. I mean, there's some obviously Imprimatur Books features heavily, and so you sold Imprimatur Books in just after it was last year, right? It was
2024.
2024. So just after Two Ranks came out,
Yeah,
you sold the book business and all of the stock to
yeah.
Jim Phillips,
Jim
who's
Phillips, Canberra. Yeah,
yeah. So Imprimatur Books um, as a book selling business has moved away, although you've retained the name because Jim wanted to take the business but wanted to rebrand. So he very kindly left you the name. So we still have Imprimatur as the publishing arm. But it was a really significant feature in our lives for so long, all those catalogs. How many catalogs did you do over 30 plus years?
About 287.
Wow, that's yeah. We talked for a while about how we should bind all that up and put it into a book itself because it was
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
enough things. And
There'd
you used to always
be a
write
book
it.
in.
You used to always write a little preamble to each,
Little blurbs.
yeah, and collect all those together and put them into a book. I'm sure someone would
We
would
could do
like to
that.
read.
We could do that.
We'll do that next. It was always something that's next. It's always something. Uh,
Oh, mate.
yeah.
Uh, we've got well, I'm out of the SAS. I want to do some work on that this year.
Yeah, we got the Badco book, we got Hail Mary, we got so many books to do. So there's not
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
hours in the day. But yeah, imprimatur books became very important. The Army Museum really dominated our lives for a couple of years there, where you were running that place. That was towards the end of my high school time. We would spend a lot of time at the artillery barracks in Freo.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
times down
Then
there.
we're getting tanks and artillery pieces and all sorts of things donated, which is you can't have a museum without that stuff.
Yeah,
I remember you kids in Canberra climbing all over the Centurion tank outside the War Memorial,
yeah,
which you can't do these days.
yeah,
But used to love every Sunday going down there and climbing all over the tank.
yeah, yeah. Good memories.
Um,
So yeah, so it felt like and then, that real victory of warding Notre Dame off the artillery barracks up. It would you look at it from one perspective, you look at it and you think it's logical that to fill to repurpose that space with students, but it would be a completely different
oh,
vibe down there in Freo if that was the case.
yeah, it would be.
Because
They
I
want
think they also wanted
they
to
want
take
to
over
turn.
the apartments on Gunners Row, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. They wanted it all.
Yeah.
The army being gutless, bloody near sold it to them.
Mm.
But we had a few tricks up our sleeve, the old blokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They set up a barbecue outside Tannock's office, um, and with all these banners and
Yeah.
music and everything, and cooking barbecues. And I think he got a bit sick of that, and they
Yeah.
thought it would be a warm start.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
could just offer the army a couple of mil, take over the whole barracks.
Hmm.
So we rescued it, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. And other big highlights from that time, the book, the 40th anniversary book, sort of seeing that date shows me that like next year's the 70th, or the uh yeah, yeah, 19 so yeah, 2027 coming up. So it's nearly double the time of the regiment
Yeah,
since
yeah.
that book. But
I won't be I won't be dragged kicking and screaming into doing the book. Someone else will have to do that.
right. But that was a great thing. I always wondered about the copies of the book with the free fall parachuters upside down. Um, uh,
I
do you, do you
could
still
not believe it.
do you still have copies of the ones with the errors?
Yeah,
Surely those are even more of a collector's item.
they're probably worth more, more than the actual book.
It's like those stamps with the airplane upside down.
Yeah,
They're worth much
the boy's
more.
doing a four-man star,
Yeah.
and they're all upside down. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I remember for months our dining room table just covered in pictures and the organization. So eventually something's going to slip through. And
Well, I was just so cheesed off that we chose a publisher who was useless.
yeah.
They weren't in the business of doing very well at all, actually.
Hmm. Right.
Um, but so disappointing that they allowed it to go like that.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas our two ranks on the road printer did a superb job.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing, very, very. When you look at that, just a solid 1 kilo book,
Yeah.
color photos, um, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
So
they can't keep them on the shelves at Boffin's in
no,
Perth, because people walk past it and see it on the shelf and pick it up.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's
But
that
yeah,
mate, the photograph. I'm thinking about donating that photograph to the association, to
yeah,
the Oracle collection, the big one.
the big one.
It's in the hallway.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about it. I probably
Uh-huh.
won't do it.
Right. Okay, fair enough. I suppose this is the part of your life where you start giving away everything I plan to inherit.
And that's for you. That's one's for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then yeah, lots of publishing. And so you did the 40th anniversary book, and then you resurrected Rendezvous, which is still going. I saw that there was a new issue of Rendezvous that came out recently. It looks pretty good. Looks like
Yeah,
of the
it's
similar
pretty
kind of
good.
style. So what you
Yeah.
got it up and so
They
that's
still
a
haven't got the list of dead people in the back. That's the only problem.
right. Okay. Well, maybe that,
So
yeah,
their point is, oh, it's too much hard work, and besides, the list is on the website,
right. Hmm.
which I haven't seen. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then you wrote Simo, which was
Yeah,
also very, very successful. You and Pete Lutley put that together,
yeah,
and that's a fairly important
it is. Yeah,
publication. Important to get the word
yeah. We're
out there.
still selling those.
Yeah, so if you're interested in getting a copy of Simo, you can go to mickmalone.com.au and get a copy of that. There's still some copies of that available, and that's a fairly important
I've
history
got a
to.
box of hardbacks under the bed,
Oh, okay, there you go.
$100 each, signed.
There you go. So we'll find out who's listening to the podcast. All the collectors will come out of the woodwork. Yeah, and
Uh,
then yeah, so the publishing has been a really satisfying thing. I mean, the fact that you always claimed yourself as an autodidact, high school dropout, uneducated mug from the bush, and then you've written at least three books and 250 catalogs, and you wrote the
12
weekly.
years of RVs.
Yeah, you did the all of the post game reports from the rugby team you coached in 1992. You seem you're a prolific writer for someone who claims to have no education.
No, mate, I taught myself though.
Yeah, that's good. Not
You're
everyone
going
can
to
do
talk
that.
about the photographs in that chapter?
We haven't got there yet, but I was talking about other things. But if you'd like to move on, that's all right. Yeah, there's plenty of good photos in this chapter. Anyone who has the book in front of them can follow along if you're listening to the podcast. If you'd like to see what I'm showing, you can go to the YouTube video. There's a photo there on page 338. There's a photo there of you in your with your gongs dressed up at the Army Museum. That's the father that I remember, well, from when I was about 18, a younger man. Yeah.
Haven't changed a bit, mate.
And then the image of the original Army Museum shop there were very cluttered and dark, but your happy place, happy to be there with
Mm.
all your collections. And that museum shop was that all of your stock that was in there?
Mostly.
Yeah, yeah. And then the memorable moment when you and Stanley Bilbrough reconnected in the 90s.
Ocker the Shocker.
Yeah, so so that story of you going out to Adelaide to spend time with Stan Bilbrough. So page 340, there's a photo of you with Stan, and there's you have two of his original works hanging in your house right now. So um,
I've got one here
Yeah, one in that office, and then
one
the
in the
other.
lounge room,
Yeah,
another one in somewhere else.
yeah, yeah.
Three. Georgia bought two.
Right,
The two that I bought back in Adelaide, she bought them,
right.
which they've still got the JC's place.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so good stories, good times. And
Yeah,
then we have a photo here of you and Mum at the house up on the hill.
you and the Queen.
Yeah. So that's a picture of you two with the Imprimatur book sign. You hung your shingle out
Yeah,
probably in Sawyer's Valley, but that was a good move. That was a good place up there.
yeah, it was.
Hmm. Yeah. We also see on page 349 photos of your mum and Mum's mum, Joyce and Dawn.
They're the girls.
So it's yeah, nice to see both of them as young women. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, long before we were thought about. And then finally, there's the big photo. Well, I love the photo here on the last page of the book, page 353. There's the entire family. Um, we did a little photo shoot in Hyde Park a few years ago when the kids were little, when we were here, and we wanted to make sure we got some photos of the whole family together. And it was kind of um, very forward thinking that we did that
That was
because,
good. I'm glad we did that.
well, as we've said in past in the past episodes, we lost Georgia in 2024, in 2025, sorry. Um, and when this photo was taken, we had no idea she wasn't sick. So it was she thought she had 40 years and she didn't. So this was July 2019. So this is even before the pandemic, um, which so a lot of things have changed since then, and
They have.
a lot of the stories, a lot of the things in this chapter about us growing up and and getting married and things like that, having kids. It's bittersweet reading it now because a lot has changed with the loss of Georgia.
It's so
But
tragic, mate.
yeah, but we soldier on. There's not really any choice.
We've all got good memories of her, which is great.
Yeah,
And Mum's been as tough. She's been so strong.
yeah,
Um, but that's the way it is. You know, you lose somebody, you've actually got to overcome your grief eventually.
yeah,
Not that it'll ever happen around here, but
yeah.
I've lost a lot of mates, but not many family members.
Hmm.
Pete getting killed in Vietnam wasn't fun. Um, and Pete Ryan dying, that was tragic.
Yeah, but yeah,
But
it's
losing Georgia, my God. Anyway,
yeah, yeah, but
well,
well, I mean,
she'll be forever remembered. That's the thing.
yes, absolutely. And doing this podcast is one way of doing that, making sure that her name is continuing to be out there and
It
spoken of.
is. It is.
Yeah. So that's the end of the book. So much to talk about, so much to go through. There's stuff that we haven't discussed in great detail yet, but we also don't want to make this episode 3 hours long. So we'll leave it there. But this isn't the last episode of the series or the season at least. We're going to do one more after this just to wrap things up. Just talk about some of the
Okay.
things that are at the end of the book after the chapters. So we'll be back again next week for one more episode, and then after that we'll take a little break. So this first season has been two ranks on the road. And we have plans for the second season, which we'll talk about next week. But that is all the time we have this week for Never Die Wondering. So join us next week for the next installment in our exploration of Mick Malone's career as we consider the final pages of the book, including the appendices and the legendary index. If you
This scoundrel.
If you have a copy of Two Ranks, read along with us. I've been Toby Malone, and thank you to Mick Malone for laconically joining me on this journey.
See you later, mate. I love you.
Love you too, Dad. This has been Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words. For links to purchase your own copies of Mick's books, visit the show notes or mickmalone.com.au. This podcast is produced by Toby Malone, Joe Malone and Mick Malone, and engineered by Toby Malone. Theme music is The Happy Wanderer, the official SAS march, as reimagined by Cormac Malone and Meg Logue Malone. Yes, this is a family affair. This is a GM production in association with Imprimatur Books.